And welcome to a playoff edition of the Yinziders podcast. I'm Jenna Harner from WPXI. He's Mike DeFabo, Steelers beat writer for The Athletic. We do want to let all of our listeners and viewers know that in the next segment, we have a fantastic interview coming up with Jonathan Alexander, Houston Texans beat writer for the Houston Chronicle. So that is coming your way. But Mike, I think have to first just dive into the craziness, the insanity, the almost, I don't even know the emotions to describe what happened Sunday night, early Monday morning at Acrisure Stadium, and just the roller coaster of emotions that came with that thrilling 26-24 win, the Steelers beating the Ravens in just wild fashion. I think that fourth quarter alone, I still haven't recovered from just the momentum swings.
Well, I think I still smell like a cigar from being inside the Steelers' winning locker room. Everywhere you looked, guys were lighting them up. And it was kind of funny. TJ Watt was like, I was trying to get out there as quick as possible because probably the last thing that somebody recovering from a lung injury needs is to be standing in a room full of cigar smoke.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely crazy game. And I think a very fitting way to end a regular season that was very Mike Tomlin-like.
Yeah.
If you are a big fan of Zeke's picks, which is our final segment each week where we pick the games, at the very end, I said that it felt like it would be like nothing logically made sense why the Steelers would have won that game. They were without DK Metcalf. They've been inconsistent against the run. The Ravens might have a more talented roster, but one of the biggest things going for the Steelers was it would just be so perfectly Mike Tomlin for a team to lose against the Browns and then bounce back and win. And even the way that it came down to the very end with 4 lead changes in the fourth quarter, including, I think, 3 within the final 4 or 5 minutes. Crazy.
The final 5 drives were touchdown, 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 Tyler Loop's missed field goal. It was just insanity in every single way. And I think, it felt like it was over. I'm sure when you were putting your game story together and you're kind of writing things at the end, you're writing it as if, okay, hey, the season's about to end here. This Tyler Loop is pretty much automatic inside 40. Although it was really interesting because he had not made a lot of field goals pregame. And that was something some Ravens beat writers were saying, like, hey, he did not look good pregame here. We know how hard and tough of a stadium, Acrisure Stadium, yes. I don't know why I just said Acrisure Field. I'm so used to saying Heinz Field. Acrisure Stadium is to kick in. But that was just, it was, you're right. It was such a perfectly fitting end to the regular season for the Steelers. And now they're hosting a playoff game for the first time since 2020. And it's the first time fans are going to be in the stadium, too, at full capacity, because that 2020 game, of course, was early 2021, the COVID season.
Yeah.
So a lot of fans weren't allowed there yet. So it's going to be...
well, let's talk about like a couple things that they did within that game. And I think you probably have to start with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And this year, I think the way that I would describe it is he's an all-time great who's had a pretty good season given everything around him and what the expectations were for him. And I think when the Steelers brought him in, you have to realize, like, no one expected him to be 4-time MVP Aaron Rodgers.
No.
And he's not been that. But when they've needed Aaron Rodgers best, for the most part, he has delivered.
Yeah,
starting with the first game that they won, Week 14, against the Baltimore Ravens. Then he followed it up against the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And then now, it continued the game against the Browns, one of his worst games. And he said, I don't normally put 2 stinkers back to back.
Yep.
And then he responded with, and really, I guess the best way to phrase it is they signed Aaron Rodgers for when you need a drive, not even when you need his best game.
No,
when you
right.
need a drive, you need an experience, you need, hey, the old like talk radio question. You've got 2 minutes, and who are you putting the ball in their hands to take you down the field? Even at 42 years old, Aaron Rodgers still, is a guy who's top half of the league in that category.
And I love the, obviously it was the touchdown to Calvin Austin that goes on to be the game-winning touchdown. I loved the quote from Rodgers where he was talking about, he's trying to get Calvin's understanding on things. He's like, okay, hey, what do you see here if we
He
run
wanted
this?
him, like he said, on the front side of the route, because they'll call a route concept to the front side.
Yep.
And then the backside, he'll ask Calvin, like, what do you want to do on the backside?
Yeah, and Calvin kind of just wasn't really giving him an answer. And finally, someone in the huddle, Rodgers was like, I don't know if it was Pat Fryermuth, Mason McCormick, we're gonna have to get to the bottom of that later this week, was just like, go cook them. Go out there and cook them. And that's exactly what Calvin Austin did. And, I loved his emotion in the locker room. You approached him pretty early on in the locker room, and his reaction was just spectacular.
Yeah, I walked up to him like, do you have a minute to talk? And he's like, man, I'll talk to anybody right now. He was like extremely fired up. He said he's going to send the ball to his pops,
Yep.
which was kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, now the Steelers, I think they go into the playoffs with some momentum because you look at the difference between last year, it was like they took their foot off the gas pedal, kind of eased and coasted into the playoffs as a wild card team.
Yeah.
They were taking on water. It looked like things weren't going well. It was basically the opposite this year, where their backs were against the wall. They've felt that sense of urgency. They've felt that pressure. They've responded to the adversity at times. And I think that can serve a team well.
I think so. Rodgers also kind of mentioning to winning a game like this and the belief that creates in the locker room of, hey, this group can win these types of games. I think that bodes really well for them going into the playoffs. Execution is going to be one thing. Facing the Texans is going to be another thing. There's a lot of wrinkles and layers to that discussion there. But
let's talk real quickly, though, just very quickly about the defense, because
that was
this has been a defense that, I mean, coming into the year, there couldn't have been higher expectations.
No.
First of all, this is a world where expectations are tied to compensation.
Yep.
It's just the way it is.
And it's the highest paid defense in the league.
Yeah, and when you're paid so handsomely, like a $250 million defense or $150 million defense, you got to live up to those expectations. They haven't always done it, but I think that there have been times where you're seeing growth. And to me, the area where they've shown the most growth actually probably has been against the run. I know Derrick Henry surpassed 100 rushing yards in the first half alone.
But most of it was on that first play.
And guys, like individually, if you looked, like Mike Tomlin described it this way, and I think I agree with him, like down to down, you look at what the guys up front did. Cam Hayward had an awesome game.
Unbelievable.
He was kicking ass all game long. Keanu Benton had a kind of slow start to this year, kind of underwhelming when you expect him to be this big piece for them. He had one of his better games. And then Derek Carman's been as advertised all year long. It's just a matter of him being healthy. And so I think it really started with that group up front, controlling the line of scrimmage and doing their part. You're not going to shut down Derrick Henry, but at least being able to contain him and not allowing him to completely run wild was a huge part of it.
And then considering the game he came off of the week prior against the Green Bay Packers, and granted that was very different in terms of just the personnel that Green Bay had up front and the lack of defensive linemen they had. But I also look at, TJ Watt comes back and Cam Hayward or Alex Highsmith, whoever it was, batted that ball. TJ Watt comes away with the interception, making that big splash play as he tends to do in these types of games. Alex Highsmith playing really well. I unfortunately unable to get Lamar Jackson on that one play, but you almost look at that and say, that's Lamar. That is what Lamar Jackson does and why he gets paid to do what he does so well. Nick Herbig making an impact. Like this defense, at least I would say.
Yeah, they're not perfect. And especially on the back end, when you allow those explosive plays, even Cam Hayward was like, at the end, and I agree with him. On the back end, they have question marks, but there are some signs of growth and that they're playing better. And it was kind of like, if you're going to make a checklist of how do you beat the Ravens, it's like TJ Watt game-changing play,
you have to stop the
a missed field goal, Aaron Rodgers delivering a drive when you need it. Like they checked a lot of the boxes that you would need to beat the Ravens.
Yeah. And it's just now again, they're shifting and they face a Texans team that we really dive into in the next segment and talk about just all the game makers and play changers that they bring.
Playmakers and game changers.
Yeah, we're still sleep has not been a thing this week. I'm still trying to get back.
We're delirious.
A little delirious here, but I think we'd also be remiss too leading into this week if we didn't touch on the fact that DK Metcalf is returning. He served his 2-game suspension. He's been officially reinstated. You're in the locker room on Monday when he is back for the first time.
Yeah,
and
I've been singing the song because DK walks into the locker room and Marquez Valdez-Scantling is standing there next to Aaron Rodgers and burst into song and is singing, "Welcome back, Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
What's it from? What's it from again?
Welcome Back, Kotter. Apparently, a sitcom from the 70s. So if you're an old and you've watched it, shout out to you.
Yeah.
But it is big to have DK Metcalf back because, I mean, if that kick had sailed inside the uprights, we would be sitting here, and one of the main discussion points would be, holy hell, DK Metcalf derailed the Steelers season.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf and whoever performed the dry needling session that punctured TJ Watt's lung destroyed this season.
Yeah.
And it would have been, like, for the soap opera Steelers, it would have been a horrible disaster of an ending and the rug getting pulled out from under their season for it to happen that way. Instead of talking about, hey, DK really cost the Steelers, and I should add the caveat, we don't know exactly, and we never, I think, will get his full version of the story, what this fan really said in their first interaction and whether he may have been provoked in a certain way to justify it to a degree. That's a nuanced conversation, but I just want to add that caveat. But rather than talking about what they missed with DK Metcalf, now you're talking about what he brings.
And I mean, just the offense, Mike Tomlin kind of downplayed it. I felt like when we talked with him earlier this week, it was a little of like, he of course adds something, but he doesn't add everything. To me, your number one playmaker comes back into the fold here. You are getting an explosive guy that completely changes the way opponents game plan against you. And I think we could dive into like 5 different discussions here, but something that was, I think so many people were talking about in the Ravens game was, oh, why aren't they getting Pat Freiermuth? Where's Pat Freiermuth? Pat Freiermuth kind of became one of the biggest weapons, and I think the Ravens knew that, and there were lots of times where they were bringing a second safety over. Like, Pat Freiermuth, they were trying to take him away. Now, when DK Metcalf comes back, you have so much more that this offense can bring, and they're going to need every single thing against one of the top defenses in the league in the Texans. And I think you also got the sense, too, from DK talking with him in the locker room on Monday, just kind of to me, listening to him, it almost seemed like this just like relief and elation. I think that was like a combination of, hey, he gets another chance here, and gratitude, too, where you could see his sense of talking with, a lot of the guy, he was really grateful that a lot of his teammates, they did what they did to get them this win so he could return and look to make an impact here in the postseason.
Yeah, they kind of bailed him out in a way where that's not really, like, now you can move on. And no matter how you feel about it, you're not going to say, hey, DK really destroyed their season, because they're in the playoffs. And as you're alluding to, like, he makes an impact, no question, because through the first 16 weeks of the season, he was targeted on 22% of the Steelers' passing plays. I mean, they're a team that their roster looks like DK Metcalf at wide receiver, big gap, everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay. He has 99 targets. Calvin Austin at wide receiver, among wide receivers, is next with 55.
Yep.
So that shows you just like how much of the offense DK or passing game DK is responsible for. But I think his impact, as you're talking about, goes beyond that, because teams are going to double him in a variety of ways. Like, you look at what the Chargers did. They played a lot of 2-man, and almost every time one of those safeties was going to be doubling DK Metcalf. You look at what the Seahawks did. They played a lot of cover 6, and a lot of times the zone double was to his side. Teams are going to cloud coverage his way. They're going to bracket him. And all that's going to open up opportunities for guys like Calvin Austin and even the dump-off game to Kenneth Gainwell that has become such a focal point
of this offense.
I mean, this offense is like half dump the ball to Kenneth Gainwell and let him create after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
Even having DK Metcalf there is going to open up more opportunities for Kenneth Gainwell and others within that way. But so now they're in the playoffs, though.
Yeah.
And it's been like, we've been talking about there have been fire Tomlin chants, and what are they going to this week, or actually like an hour ago as we record this, the Ravens fired John Harbaugh. So the question is, what constitutes a successful season at this point for the Steelers? Do you sit here and say, like, okay, they've got a 42-year-old quarterback, This wasn't the best roster, especially at the wide receiver position. They were projected to finish third in the division. They ended up winning it.
Yeah.
Is it a success, or do they still need the playoff win to justify it?
And I think that goes into too, how different people define success. And we were talking about this as we were getting our outline for the podcast together, but you almost can look at it as like an existential type of conversation. Like, what is success and what would it mean? But I think winning the division to me, I, it changes a little bit of the conversation. It just adds another level to it because that was something I don't think anybody anticipated coming into this season. So I think, of course, when you win the division, granted, it was the second worst division in the National Football League this season, you still win a division title. That's still something that
It's a little
you,
different than
yeah,
saying like you snuck into the playoffs.
yeah, as a wild card team. I completely agree. But I think the goal has always been at least at bare minimum win a playoff game. And I know so many people will talk about, okay, well, this is a franchise that's won 6 Super Bowls and there has been so much success, and how did it get to this point now where only winning a playoff game is that should be the bare minimum. And I understand that, but based on the moves this team made this offseason, again, they went out, they got Aaron Rodgers. They made that big blockbuster trade to acquire blockbuster acquisition to get DK Metcalf. They
Trade, they gave up a second round pick, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
they
And
signed
then
him. Yeah,
the big trade for DK Metcalf, the trade with Miami to acquire Jalen Ramsey and Johnny Smith, sending Minka Fitzpatrick over. Like, the moves that they made, also too, paying TJ Watt, paying Cam Hayward, they
right.
kind of pushed chips in. It felt like this team was saying, hey, we're pushing chips in here. And they need to win a playoff game to also quell some of the conversation about, Mike Tomlin is this great regular season coach, but it's been nearly a decade since there has been a playoff win by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think when you look at it, in my opinion, I think you can still say, hey, winning a division title was great, but I don't think there will be that discussion of was it successful if they don't at bare minimum win this game. Now, this is a very tough challenge, and I think this opponent's going to present a lot of tough challenges, but I think, in my opinion, they need to win a playoff game to say hey, this was a season where a lot went insane, but at the end of the day, it was a success, and the moves they made got them to at least that point of winning in the wild card round.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't push all chips in. They're not an all-in team, but they did create a win now roster
Yeah.
because I mean, there could have been what I would have done probably is trade Minka, trade George Pickens, and keep those draft picks
Mm.
and either draft Jackson Doherty on quarterback or just play out the year with Mason Rudolph and then rebuild so that then you have this young nucleus that then when you get the quarterback, you've got the whole team and they're young, and now you've added the last piece with the quarterback. And that's kind of what it was like when they got Ben Roethlisberger, is like he pushed them over the top, and then they had a window that was open for a while. The problem and like the risk that they run with a 42-year-old quarterback is like, okay, you make it to the playoffs. That would be if they had Jackson Dart, you'd be like, okay, they're taking a step in the right direction. You're seeing them building towards something, and you're creating hope and optimism. And if Aaron Rodgers were to step away after this year, where's that progress going?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what can you build upon and say, well, like, I feel pretty good about making the playoffs, but I feel better about next year because he's going to come back and they can add a receiver and blah, blah, blah. And you don't know, maybe that still can be the case, but that's why I feel like they might have quieted people and quieted the conversation about Mike Tomlin. But maybe just for a week.
Yeah.
And if they can win a playoff game, it still isn't going to silence everybody because the goalposts are going to continue to move. It's going to be Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game in 9 years. That's going to change too. He's won just one playoff game in 9 years. But I think at least the pendulum will start to swing the other direction where people will start to say, all right, look, he is a objectively very good, if not great, regular season coach who has underperformed in the playoffs, but now he's cracked through with a different quarterback. I think it would definitely help Mike Tomlin's case I don't think a ton, but I think it would definitely help his case.
And I
And
think
just the last thing though is like I think one of the most interesting things to me is Mike Tomlin on Sunday night matched Chuck Noll with
yep,
193 wins.
in the regular season.
And as you said, in the regular season, and a lot of people will be quick to point that out. And if you look at like the individual home run record, it doesn't include playoffs. Records are regular season records. Like Aaron Rodgers, the records that he broke were regular season. But a huge group of people, probably most people listening, I think myself also somewhat,
Yeah.
um, people will look at that and say, well, what does that mean without the 4 Super Bowls that Chuck Noll?
Yep.
And I agree. I mean, Chuck Noll is a better coach, period, when you look at the whole totality of the resume. But regular season, Mike Tomlin has reached this in 33 fewer games. He's a pretty damn good regular season coach. And so he needs to start having some playoff success for people to maybe see him in a different light than they do right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And there was this graphic going around, and as I'm starting to say this, I'm like, I'm not going to say this correctly. And this has been a bit that I keep doing all season long, where I'm like, hey, this stat, I don't remember it
No,
entirely.
I think I know. Are you talking about the 3 coaches?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's the win total for teams among the last either 5 or 10 years. I think it's 5. I'm pretty sure
This
it's
is
5.
great. It's a podcast. You're listening to it, and she's describing a graphic that was
Yeah.
visual.
But honestly, but the Steelers in that time span have the most have the 4th best record in the National Football League. In this, I need to find this. We're gonna keep talking about this.
I think it's okay.
Are you looking?
No, it's okay.
I'm gonna pull it up.
It's okay. The bottom line is they've won a ton of regular season games. But
you're right.
But at some point, a pretty good season isn't good enough.
No.
And that's the thing. Like when you win a division and you make the playoffs and you lose first round, people say that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But when you only do that, that's the problem. People say pretty good, you want great. You want something better than pretty good if pretty good is all you're getting.
Yeah. Before we dive in to our interview with Jonathan Alexander, which is spectacular, and you will
learn a lot about the Texans.
Exactly. We'll just get you ready for this matchup. We have to touch on the fact that you jumped on the Texans bandwagon all the way back in 2023 in terms of believing in the team, and when you made your picks for your weekly pick'em, based on week 4, 2023, when the Steelers and the Texans played, and the Texans absolutely demolished the Steelers.
So the Texans smoked the Steelers in that game.
Yep.
And I remember saying to you, by the end of this year, I think that people are going to look at this loss and realize that wasn't a bad loss because the Texans are going to be a good team. The problem I had was I was the first one on the bandwagon.
Yep.
I was literally
no one was there
driving the Texans bandwagon, and I was doing it for a couple weeks.
No.
And then they started falling apart. I got off the bandwagon.
That's correct. You did.
And all of a sudden it picked up steam. I had to sprint and catch back up to the bandwagon.
Yep.
I had to wait for the next train to come to get back on that bandwagon. But
you didn't believe.
So I was an early adopter of the Texans, and we'll have to see. One final thing before we jump into this. Well, I guess we could talk about this in Zeke's picks. We'll save that. That'll be a tease for Zeke's picks. And also shout out, Jenna got me a hat that is actually Zeke. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's actually Zeke from Zeke's picks. So
from Zeke's picks.
Shout out to Zeke.
He's famous. Shout out to Zeke. Well, we will take a quick break. When we come back, Jonathan Alexander joins us to break down this matchup and dive into everything you need to know about the Texans. Stick with us. This is the Yinziders. And welcome back to the Yinziders podcast. We are now joined by Jonathan Alexander from the Houston Chronicle. Jonathan, thank you so much for taking some time. We got a massive playoff matchup coming up this week here in Pittsburgh. I want to start with the Texans defense because that feels like the big storyline coming into this game. And there's been so much talk about how they're at the top of the league in virtually every statistic. They're first in yards per game allowed. They're second in points, third in turnovers. Just kind of big picture, what makes this Texans defense so good?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that they're talented at every single level. Whether that's defensive line, you got the two edge rushers and Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr., who both all pro caliber players. Their linebacker core has gotten better. Aziz Al-Shaair is a Pro Bowl player. And then you go to the secondary, and they have arguably the best secondary in the NFL between Derek Stingley Jr., who's an all pro, Kamari Lassiter, who was an alternate Pro Bowler, and then you got Jalen Petrie, who was an alternate Pro Bowler, and Kalen Bullock, who was an alternate Pro Bowler. They have talented players at every level, and they're coached by a coach who was considered one of the best defensive minds in all of football, dating back to his days when he was in San Francisco. So when you put all those pieces together, 3 years in the same system, building a team with a lot of good defensive players, then you have what has culminated into this number one defense.
One thing that gave the Steelers fits 2 weeks ago was Myles Garrett in that pass rush. And while Myles Garrett didn't like get on the stat sheet and set the sack record in that game, you could tell that there was a clear emphasis from the Steelers to get the football out of Aaron Rodgers' hands so that he could not wreck the game. Now it's like the Steelers don't have to deal with just one really good edge player, but two. Like, what kind of a challenge are those two guys, and what specifically do you feel like makes those two edge players from the Texans so good?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that when you have both of those guys on the field, and they're both often on the field at the same time, you can't often chip or double team because if you put too much attention on one guy, then the other guy can get off. And both of those guys are capable of getting off at any moment. I mean, we talk a lot about Will Anderson Jr. and he's having an all pro caliber year, but Daniil Hunter has 15 sacks, which is third in the league. And I think that's been the
Crazy.
trouble. Yeah, I think that's been the trouble for a lot of teams is they don't really know who to focus on because when they put focus on one person, the other guy gets off. And I think the strategy for teams this year as they've tried to attack the Texans is really try to get the ball out of their hands quickly so those guys don't get to you and try to win on early downs because when you can't win on early downs, when you can't run the ball, that's when you get in trouble against this defense and you allow Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter those opportunities because eventually they're going to beat you. They have a variety of
Yeah.
pass rush moves. They're motivated by each other, by themselves, by getting after the quarterback. Uh, so really, for the Steelers to win, I think one of their things is going to be having to get the ball out of their hands quickly and try to beat you on the ground.
And that's kind of been something that we've seen has been a little bit of a hallmark of this offense this season, just with that 42-year-old veteran Aaron Rodgers back there. He's not holding on to the ball for too long, and when he has been, it's been almost detrimental to what the Steelers have done. I want to talk a little bit matchup specific because you mentioned this secondary as one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL. Have they faced a receiver like DK Metcalf this season, and how do they look to defend a guy like him, either schematically or personnel wise?
Yeah, I would probably say probably the most similar guy they've probably faced is probably a Devontae Adams, kind of, bigger bodied receiver, can do a lot of things, can high point the ball. And in that situation, they like Derek Stingley on the opposite man. And Derek Stingley has had another all pro season this year. So, I'd assume that they'd go that way, have Stingley on DK, but they also love what they have in Kamari Lassiter on the opposite side. He's improved from his rookie season. He's had a great season. He's their best tackling cornerback, one of their best tacklers on the team. Not afraid to fit the run game as well, and it's really good in coverage. I think this team in general just has a lot of confidence. It doesn't matter who they've gone up against. The one player who really gave them fits this year. Um, yeah, I really don't count the Week 18 game because a lot of the Texans backups were in. Kamari Lassiter didn't play, and they got exposed on the opposite end. But the one player that did give them fits was Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they thought that they should have pressed him more. But aside from that, they like their matchup with whoever they've played throughout the league. But I do think Metcalf is a problem.
I was looking at some of the numbers and just the different coverages that they play, and it seems like they play a variety of things, whether they're going to be too high, you know, quarters or cover two or cover six, or then of course they're going to mix in, everything like everybody does. But like, what's kind of their philosophy? Because Aaron Rodgers has talked so much about like there've been a lot of games where he's been kind of like a check down guy, like get the ball out of his hands, get it to the running back Kenneth Gainwell, or hurry up and get it to DK Metcalf on a slant. And he said, like, look, I can't attack downfield if I'm facing a lot of too high coverages. How do the Texans kind of mix things up and try to throw quarterbacks off guard there?
Yeah, the Texans, they're actually one of the more simpler teams. They don't disguise their coverages a lot. They play a lot of cover three, a lot of cover four, and they match. And they keep it simple. And somehow that's been successful. I was actually talking to Herm Edwards. I was asking him what he likes about this defense. He said, the reason why they're successful is, there are weaknesses in a cover three defense, of a cover four, and the Texans really know well what their weaknesses are. And they know how teams like to attack them, and they're prepared for when teams try to attack their weaknesses. And that's why they've been successful. And I'd assume that the Pittsburgh Steelers will probably fall into the trap of what other teams have done. Um, like I said, like the one key to beating the Texans team is running the football well. Even though they haven't given up a lot of rushing yards, if you can run the football well, then you do give your offense a chance, because you find yourself in third and short situations more often. You can't get in. Aaron Rodgers will not survive if he's in third and long and holding on to the ball for a long
Right.
time. There's just absolutely no way with this team, especially if the team is healthy. But if you can win on early downs, you can win on the ground. Then perhaps you can have success.
One more matchup question here on defense. It seems like the Texans play a fair amount of nickel, and they've got one of the best nickels in the league. Um, the Steelers are an interesting team because, like, Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, loves his tight ends. He loves his heavy personnel groupings. Always they've been near the top of the league in 12 and 13 personnel. How have the Texans reacted when they faced those type of teams? Are they content to just stay in nickel, or is that a way to get them out of that and get them into a base defense?
No, see, I think really this is what's set the Texans over the top, is the fact that they run nickel more than among the highest in the league, and that's because they have Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie can stuff the run, and he can play in the pass. And one of the things I was talking to their defensive coordinator, Matt Burke, and he said, like you were mentioning, a lot of teams will put heavy personnel in because a lot of nickels can't fit the run. And for many teams, that's checkmate, but that's not checkmate for the Texans. You know, Jalen Petrie is one of the best run stoppers in the league. Like he thrives off getting in the backfield, and he's improved his coverage this year. I think that was one of the things that really helped him, was improving his coverage. And Jalen Petrie's versatility, being able to stop the run, being able to be in coverage. He also plays safety from time to time when they need him. I think really strengthens this defense because they don't have to match personnel. Like they don't have to
Mm-hmm.
take him out of the game because he can just do so many things. I think that is really the strength. It really is the difference between D'Amico Ryan's defense last year and this year, because Jalen Petrie got hurt towards the end of the year.
Let's look offense here because obviously CJ Stroud has been just such a captivating player as a quarterback since he's entered the league. Where is he in his development? Obviously, I know there's been some injuries with him this season, that concussion, but where is he kind of along that developmental process?
Yeah, CJ Stroud, I think he's playing a lot better than he was last year. Last year, we were talking about this recently with someone. Last year, the Texans were limping into the playoffs. They had a
Mm-hmm.
ton of injuries at quarterback. Their offensive line was, in my opinion, the worst in football. I've never seen a worse offensive line. And CJ Stroud is really, his success is really predicated on the play of the offensive line. Like it's like night and day his play between when his offensive line is protecting him. Like he's an elite quarterback when his offensive line is protecting him. When his offensive line is not protecting him, he is among the bottom. There is a stark difference. And they've really done a good job of, they've literally cut the sacks in half. 31 sacks allowed this season. Last year was 54. And that's allowed CJ Stroud in this new offense to thrive more. Now, there has been some inconsistencies there, but it's not nearly as bad as it was last year. And I also think CJ Stroud is playing with a lot more confidence this year. He has experience going into this playoffs, having been there before. He's not afraid of the moment. He's learning that he doesn't have to do everything on his own. He can if his offensive line allows, but he's not having to do that. And they don't need for him to do that. They need for him to take care of the football, do what he does, and then the defense will handle the rest. This defense, when they've had a 14-point lead, they haven't given it up this year. So that's the Texans' mindset is they live by death of a thousand cuts. They'll take care of the football and won't turn the ball over and beat you that way. But CJ Stroud has definitely played better than what he was last year, and that's a positive sign for them because he is the face of their franchise and who they plan to continue to build around.
You mentioned that so much of his growth has been tied to how the offensive line has played. What's the reason for the improvements on the offensive line? Have they made investments up front, or is it just development, or what do you point to there?
I mean, I'd argue that they need less investments, um, you know, at particular spots, but they but but they looked for people who more so fit their mindset, and I think the scheme better fits. I just think the scheme last year and the offensive line coach they had last year were just a total disarray. It did not work. It did not have answers for free rushers, and this year they have a new offensive line coach and a new offensive coordinator whose offensive line scheme is much better fits them, much better fits Stroud's, puts more responsibility in his hands, and they're not making the same mistakes. There were so many free rushers last year. It was ridiculous. A lot of guys were dealing with injuries. Some guys were even out of shape, and I think you have guys this year who might not be as talented as the guys were last year, but they are singularly focused and getting the job done. A lot of them are playing on 1-year contracts and motivated to do well, to get better contracts. And that has paid off for the Texans along with a better scheme, along with responsibility in the right place for CJ Stroud, calling the checks, calling the mics, who's rushing. I think that has helped the Texans.
Now, the Steelers haven't faced the Texans since 2023. This isn't a team they see a ton, I guess, as of late, as of recently, I guess. But what you mentioned, this kind of is a little bit of a new offense here. What are the hallmark? What's the identity of this offense?
Yeah. They're death by a thousand cuts. They like to hold on to the ball as much as possible. Not a lot of explosive plays unless it's there. They did have a few explosive plays against the Chargers, which was a little bit surprising. But they like to hit those in-breaker routes to Nico Collins. When they get into the red zone, try to get Jaden Higgins, their big rookie wide receiver. Um, for touchdowns. Charging the phone. Thank you. Sorry about that. But yeah,
It's all
so um, yeah, they like to run the football. They like to run the football to get the play action going. Their running game isn't as good as it was last year. They're definitely missing Joe Mixon. But they have promise. They have young guys who can bust big gains if needed. Woody Marks has shown a tendency to be explosive, can do a lot of different things. But they're a team that likes to take care of the football and have the ball in their possession and keep the ball out of the other team's possession while the defense rests up and does their thing.
You mentioned Nico Collins. That might be the one thing that I remember from that 2023 matchup. Nico Collins absolutely went off against the Steelers, got 7 passes for 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, the interesting thing to me was that was Joey Porter Jr.'s rookie year, and it was week 4. And it was almost that game that caused the Steelers to be like, look, we got to start working in Joey Porter Jr. Like, this isn't going to work. We have corners that aren't getting the job done. So I think it's going to be a big test for Joey Porter Jr. and like how much he's grown. But just like what kind of a challenge is Nico Collins? Because you look at him and he's like 6'4", 215 pounds. He looks like he's like all kinds of yards after the catch, going to challenge your DBs to tackle. Like how much are the Steelers going to have their hands full with a guy like that?
Yeah, you're asking me all the perfect questions because I just did a story on Nico. I did a story on some of the other questions you asked me too. So I still have some interviews still stored up in my memory.
Perfect.
No, Nico Collins is he's dangerous because, he's a big 6'4" wide receiver. He's a physical guy. And I was talking to Derek Singley about this recently. Oftentimes with like big receivers, like it takes them a while to stop and go. Or if they stop, like you can almost tell what they're going to do. But Nico is fast at the top of his route, and he's gotten faster, and he can run by you. So you never know what he's going to do. Like he can run a comeback route and make it look like he's about to run a go route. And you just have to play against that. So he's just a dangerous receiver. And then when the ball's in his hands, he welcomes contact. He's the Texans' best player. I do think the Texans have a tendency to rely on him too much. And when they rely on him, they forget about their other receivers at times. Not all the time, but sometimes. And I think that's where teams have gotten them. But he is good. He's clutch. Teams know that they're going to him, and he still delivers. He's becoming one of the premier wide receivers in the league. I think he could be a all-pro this year, later on this week. But he's just really a lethal guy for the Texans. He's the key that makes this offense. Nick Haley just told me this last week. He makes the offense go.
Great minds clearly think alike, because when we were watching the Texans Colts game, that's what JJ Watt was really highlighting, just in the style of his route running and just how shifty and how elusive he can be in that way. I want to look a little bit big picture, because the Texans arguably are the hottest team, if not one of the hottest teams coming into this game. They've won 9 in a row, but this was a team that started 0-3 this season. What has been the reason for this turnaround, or was it just the first 3 weeks of the season they were facing some really stiff competition?
Yeah, I think it was. The competition early in the season was really good. They faced the Rams, who, in my opinion, are arguably top 3 teams in the NFC, probably NFL.
Yeah.
Um, the Jaguars were a surprising good team. We thought that was a bad loss initially, but the Jaguars turned out to be one of the better teams in the AFC, and the Bucks were hot at the time. But I think the chemistry was off a little bit. And they never really felt like, despite those losses, that they were really um, far off. They thought it was one or two things that they could clean up. Number one is learning how to finish games, and two, everybody being on the same page. One of the more underrated moves the Texans made this year, which I initially criticized, and I'm admittedly wrong for it now, was cutting C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Um, and he, according to our reporting, he was playing out of the defense and was kind of freelancing on his own, and I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And as soon as he went out, it just felt like the defense was flourishing. Everybody was on the same page. The person who replaced him did his job, didn't have to do too much, and then that fit exactly what the Texans needed at the time. And I think as they continue to dominate teams the rest of the way, they continue to gain confidence, because the offense was still struggling initially, and they were still in those games. And the offense got better, and the defense was still good, and then you breed a more confident team. And I thought that was really the key. They always felt like they were very close to winning. They never felt like they were down and out. In 3 games, everybody knows that team could get hurt, and like the Chiefs did, and can drop off, and then it could be your opportunity. And ultimately, that's what happened.
This has been awesome. We've learned a lot about the Texans during this conversation, but we're just going to get you out of here on one final question. We like to do this at the very end. We say the Texans are going to win this game if, and then if you could flip it, you think the Steelers are going to win this game if.
Yeah, I think the Texans are going to win this game if they can stop the run and ultimately get pressure on Aaron Rodgers. Like I mentioned to you, if Aaron Rodgers is holding on to the ball, then it is going to be a long day for the Texans. And the offense really doesn't have to do much for the Texans, as long as, the Texans are stopping their run and getting after Rodgers. I think the Steelers win if the Texans are turning over the football. If the Texans are giving the Steelers the ball back and giving them more opportunities and opportunities to score on this defense and keeping the defense on this field, then I think the Steelers win. I think those are the uh, two game changers. So the Texans can't turn the ball over if they want to win, and if and they've also got to stop the run and get after Aaron Rodgers.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. We cannot tell you how much we appreciated having you on. Please let our viewers and listeners know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and where they can read all of your work.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. I am on X at John M Alexander, and that's JONM Alexander. Post all my content there, or you can go on Houston Chronicle .com/sports/Texans, where all of my work is also posted.
Thank you so much. We loved having you on. We're excited to get you in Pittsburgh this weekend. Thanks so much for joining us. Stick with us here on the Yinziders. When we come back, a special playoff edition of Zeke's Picks. Don't go anywhere. And welcome to a special edition of Zeke's Picks here on the Yinziders. Zeke is already getting hyped because he's a little sleepy. So naturally, we're bribing him with treats, as one does. Zeke, we're diving into the wild card, Super Wildcard Weekend. It's a fun time ahead. We're going to start with Saturday's games. Game 1, Rams at the Panthers. Rams come into this matchup favored by 10.5. Zeke, are you going with the Rams, or do you think the Panthers are going to pull off a massive upset?
Zeke sit. Zeke says he's not even going to pick this one. We're going to do the other one's fancy, but he says Rams. Let's move on to the next one because he's hungry.
All right. The Packers are at the time of this recording, are 1.5 point favorites at the Bears. This NFC North showdown is going to be electric. Zeke, who you got?
Okay, so right hand is going to be, this one is going to be the Bears, and this one is going to be the Packers. Ready, Zeke?
Whoa!
Bears!
The Bears!
You picked the Bears.
The Bears.
No, I agree with Zeke, though, because losing Micah Parsons is so big. It looked like that was a really loaded roster. That team has been dinged up in general. I mean, I don't know the state of their linebackers, but a couple games ago when they got upset against the Ravens, I know that neither team was playing their starters in that one, but I don't know. I think that the Bears, even though they're coming off a pretty poor performance against the Lions, I have some faith in them to get it done. Especially,
I do too. I think the home game matters a lot in this. I think also the way that you're gonna have to get up because Zeke is gonna try to eat all of those TREATS. Okay. Good boy, Zeke. Oh, you're being really good. Right. But no, I agree. I'm with you on the Bears. We'll do this a little quickly then with Zeke and the treats. The Bills at the Jags. The Bills are favored by 1.5. Zeke, is this the year for Josh Allen? Or do the Jags pull off a big win here and keep their momentum rolling?
Okay, Zeke, sit. Okay, we got right hand Bills, left hand Jags.
Bills. The Bills. The Bills.
Don't want the Bills.
The Bears and the Bills. No, I've gone back and forth with this game a lot, and I think that we look at Josh Allen and he is such a hero and the way that he plays and he can create almost, anything out of what is seemingly nothing. I think the Bills' defense has figured a lot out this season. I think their offense still has some question marks, but I know they're getting healthy at the right time. This is going to be, in my mind, the matchup of the playoffs, or at least the matchup of this first round here. And I truly think it could be either team, whichever team has the ball in their hands last. I know that's kind of a cliched and easy out there, but I think Josh Allen is just going to make those one or two insane highlight reel, ridiculous plays that he's been known to make against a Jags team that has played really, really well, and their offense has been clicking a lot. But I just think the Bills make one more play here to win.
Well, I think a big factor in this is Josh Allen can be turnover prone. I don't know how turnover prone he's been this year. And the Jags are one of the best teams at taking the ball away. I know it's cliche to be like, run the ball, stop the run, win the turnover battle. But I just feel like that's going to be such a big part of this is like, can Josh Allen protect the ball against
Yeah.
the ball hawking type of opponent? And if the Bills lose, that's going to be a fascinating dynamic. That's when people really are going to start being like, this is wide open. And especially because they play before the Steelers do, that's going to get a lot of Steelers fans excited, feeling like, wow, like just imagine if the Steelers can crack through, they might actually have a real chance to do something.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. This matchup, I feel, I mean, this is playoffs. They're all great. They're all thrilling. But the Niners head east to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. It's been such an up and down season for Philly. Philly comes into this game favored by 4.5. I'll let Zeke pick and then I'll add
Okay,
my
Zeke.
commentary here.
Zeke, sit. Come here. All right, sit. This one's going to be the Eagles on the left. This one's going to be the 49ers. Wow, you went 49ers.
Wow. I don't disagree. I
No,
think
he shook his
maybe
head no.
oh, but
Wait,
you
was
going
that a
Philly?
no? Can you interpret Zeke?
Oh. Maybe is he Zeke, are you picking the Niners to cover? Was that what you were trying to tell us? Do you think the Niners covered the 4.5 point spread, but the Eagles win?
He's
I think that
saying,
might have
yeah, I
been
think that's maybe what he's saying.
and that's Zeke. You and I, same page here, because that's exactly my thoughts in this process here. I think this being a home game for the Eagles is a massive factor in this, but I think that 4.5 points feels like a lot for a Philly team that's kind of been up and down, and there's been so much drama. And I mean, this is the NFL, it's the greatest soap opera for a reason, but there's been, the AJ Brown stuff. There's been so many ups and downs with this Eagles team. I think the Niners defense has been decently impressive given all the injuries they've had. I just don't know if there's been too many to overcome at this point. And I think that their offense had been looking great up until last week against the Seahawks. I'm afraid
But the
though
Seahawks have such a good defense,
I
and
then yeah. But
but
I the
but I think that like a Fangio-led Eagles defense, they get a lot done without blitzing you, and I
yeah.
feel like that's probably how you have to play a Shanahan, like Brock Purdy offense is like is that to just be sound versus trying to disrupt things and be chaotic.
And I think the lack of the pass rush that the Niners have lacked all season is going to come in and play a big factor here because, again, if you can give Jalen Hurts time, he is going to find ways to slice and dice and beat you. So, Zeke, I like your pick and the fact that the Niners cover, but the Eagles win. I like that. Two more. The Sunday night showdown. Chargers headed East Coast to New England to take on the Patriots, the 2 seed. The Patriots are 3.5 point favorites. I think you need to bring out the very New England themed toy for this pick.
Okay, Zeke. Wait, we got this, and then what should we do?
Lightning bolt, any sort of
We've got a lobster,
the
courtesy of Liz
lobster.
Harner. Shout out to Liz Harner for the
Yep,
lobster.
lobster.
And Ninja Turtles, courtesy of Zeke's cousin.
Yep.
So, Zeke, ready? Get it. Get it. Oh,
Which one?
he sniffed the lobster, but he's looking for treats because he's hungry. Yep. Okay. Ready, stay. For the people, Zeke. Yeah, eat your treat. For the people. Get it. Get it.
Oh,
Uh,
oh,
get it, Zeke.
no.
No. Okay. Well, that was horrendous, but
I
I think
appreciate the
that
attempt.
I think that means stay away if you are considering gambling on this game because it's going to be tough to call.
Yep.
Uh I feel like the pick is the under because these are
Yeah.
two low possession type of teams, and especially in a playoff environment. Um, What do you want to go with?
Yeah, I like that. I feel like my gut is leaning towards the Patriots just with them being the home team in this game. I think with how Drake May has been playing and just what Mike Vrabel has done for this roster this season, this was a team that no one expected to even be in the playoffs this year, let alone to be the 2 seed. I think that they've no doubt surpassed a lot of those expectations, but I think that the confidence and the belief in that team is just such a massive thing. And they know that they're playing good football and they've been playing good football for a while now, and I think that's going to continue and carry over here. I think also too, it's the weather. It's the cold, gritty New England weather that you get at this time of the year, and I think that that doesn't bode well for a Chargers team that, is oh, Zeke, that was really cute. Just totally lost my train of thought. This is what happens with how adorable Zeke is. All right, Zeke, we need you for the final pick here. Last pick of the week. His tail just
Okay.
rose.
Here's my thought on this game. I think it's interesting because the Texans, the more you hear about them, they sound like they want to win the way the Steelers have tried to win over the last 5 years, which
Yep.
was great defense and just don't screw it up on offense. And I think the concern, if you're a Texans fan, or just one of the risks that they run with that, is their margin for error is going to get thinner. Because
Yep.
then it's like, if they aren't being aggressive on offense and they're not going for it and they're playing conservatively, then you're leaving the Steelers in the game and you're leaving them in the game and you're giving Aaron Rodgers a chance to make that last run. And I think if the Steelers are going to win, I think it's going to be because of that, because the defense plays really well. I think that they're going to need TJ Watt to wreck that offensive line that our dude told us about. It seems like it's kind of a work in progress, still inconsistent. I think you're going to need the Texans to, again, play conservatively. You need Aaron Rodgers to get the ball out of his hand, not let that pass rush totally wreck the game for him. But more than anything, I think it's just going to be like the Texans playing not to win, playing not to lose,
Time to
and
lose.
then
Yeah.
losing because they played that style.
So you're going with the Steelers.
No, I'm not. But well, I don't know what I'm going with. We're going with whatever Zeke
Yeah,
is going with. He is our
that's true.
expert.
Zeke, last pick of the week here. The
Zeke,
Texans are
possibly
favored by
last pick
3.
of Steelers season.
That's true. Zeke,
Okay.
do the Texans come to
Shit.
town and get a win, or do the Steelers snap their playoff drought for the first time in nearly a decade?
This is the biggest moment today on Zeke's picks. All right, ready, Zeke? Right hand is going to be Steelers. Left hand is going to be the Texans. Zeke,
Texans.
ready?
Ah!
Zeke, go up, he's sniffing. There's no food here, Zeke. Zeke, give me 5. Oh, he picked the Steelers.
He picked the Steelers.
Wow.
Zeke. And he's licking his lips too. He likes it. He likes the
You know what he's
streak
you know what
for
he's saying? He's saying Mike Tomlin as a home dog is so he says maybe the Steelers are a good play because of they never lose on Monday Night Football. Mike Tomlin's great as a home underdog. Maybe good value in taking the Steelers. And we'll see if they can not only cover, but then also win the game.
Zeke, we will see. Love your
He just
enthusiasm
shook
and
his head
entertainment
no.
on the
So he
night.
thinks that they're gonna cover but not win. But
All right.
well,
Well, hey.
no, Zeke, you've made your pick. Your pick is the Steelers.
Yep, you've made your pick. Now you stay with it. Thank you, Zeke, for your expertise as always. Thank you all so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Yinziders. Be sure to join us every Wednesday when the episode drops. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Unfortunately, Zeke does not have a Twitter, but he does have his face on a hat. So naturally, that's the better part, in my opinion. He's at Mike DeFabo. I'm at Jenna Harner 11. This is the Yinziders podcast. Like, subscribe on wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us.